Who are you?
I'm Callista Flockhart. Who the hell do you think I am? I'm deaf. Which one of you is Peter Griffin?
He is.
In today's world, dark comedy is considered normal, often even the most honest and revealing type of humor. It appears in many modern movies and TV shows, mixing satire with tragedy to comment on real life.
Happy in your work?
Probably happy.
However, in the early days of cinema, the skins was quite different. Comedy became one of the most popular genres. For many governments, cinema turned into a powerful tool of influence, and comedy was often used as a way to spread propaganda and shape social attitudes, impacting public opinion and supporting government ideas.
See, Stanley? Honesty is the best policy.
This was especially noticeable with the advent of sound film, which coincided a difficult period for both Europe and the United States. In the United States, the early 1930s were shaped by the Great Depression. Millions of people lost their jobs, banks collapsed, and poverty became a common reality. Sound film appeared right in the middle of the crisis, and comedy suddenly gained new meaning for audiences.
Sit down, Mr. Marco, please, dear!
Sound comedies of the studio era reflected the tension of the time, beneath the witty dialogue and fast pace.
You look exactly as I thought, only 100% much better.
A growing awareness of social inequality and class struggle is palpable. The government, through censorship pressure and national moral campaign,
Diamonds is my career.
encouraged Hollywood to promote an optimistic view of life. As a result, comedies were not just light entertainment, they became a form of emotional support. They worked as social commentary, form of escape, and sometimes even a small utopian dream. They gave audiences something to hold on to and world they could believe in. In Britain, the 1930s were also marked by effects of Great Depression. Heavy industry collapsed in many parts of country. Unemployment rose and entire communities in mining and factory regions struggled to survive. Like in the United States, British audiences looked for escapism in cinema, but their comedies were different in tone and focus. Instead of centering on glamorous characters from the middle or upper class, British comedy stayed close to ordinary reality, often focused on the hard-working class and industrial life. The British government supported films that encouraged social stability and national morale. Comedians of that period were light and deliberately avoided politics, focusing more simple entertainment than on the real social problems. Working class comedians weren't trying to solve poverty or change society. They created a positive image of industrial life and reason to smile.
No.
In the Soviet Union of the 1930s, cinema became a crucial part of state policy, especially during the years of rapid industrialization and collectivization. It was a harsh and dramatic period. Forced labor, famine, and strict state control shaped everyday life. Under Stalin, films had to follow the rules of socialist realism, showing the country as strong, united, and moving confidently toward a bright future. Comedy carefully filtered through ideology. They promoted enthusiasm, discipline, and faith of socialism. Its purpose was to encourage and convince audiences that, despite all difficulties, life was improving and the sacrifices of industrialization were worth it. In Germany, the situation in 1913 was shaped by the trauma of losing World War I. The country faced economic collapse, deep social tension, and loss of national pride. During the Weimar Republic, German cinema was full of modern ideas, artistic freedom, and cosmopolitanism. When the Nazis came to power in 1933, they quickly took control of cinema and turned it into a tool for shaping society. The new government rejected modern and urban culture, turning German comedy toward tradition. Films stopped celebrating city life and instead praised rural values, simple living, and pure German identity. Everything had to feel safe, nostalgic, and harmless. It was to normalize Nazi values in a light, friendly way and slowly turn ordinary people into what government called good Germans. By the end, all these films were made before the world reached its breaking point. In 1939, everything changed. World War II began.
The responsibility lies on the shoulders of one man. By his latest act of naked aggression, Hitler has committed a crime not only against Poland, but against the whole human race.
And within a few years, the world was destroyed both physically and morally. After 1945, cinema could not return to the old style. Reality had become darker and comedy had to change with it. One of the first iconic post-war dark comedies appeared in 1947 with Charlie Chaplin's Monsieur Verdoux. He plays Henry Verdoux, a former bank clerk whose life collapses after he loses his job. Faced with financial ruin and desperate to support his disabled wife and child, he turned to shocking new profession. He becomes a charming serial killer. Verdoux travels across France, seducing wealthy widows, taking their money and quietly disposing of them. He treats murder like a business, methodical, emotionless, and fully justified in his own mind. Before the war, cinema has already featured charming criminals, like in Ernst Lubitsch's Trouble in Paradise, where the main character is a refined thief pretending to be Baron. But in that comedy, the criminal is harmless. He doesn't hurt anyone, and as the story unfolds, he even falls in love, which softens his character and keeps the film playful. Monsieur Verdoux is opposite. He doesn't change. The main character remains cold-blooded from start to finish. He manipulates and murders wealthy women for their money without showing any guilt.
What's that?
That's an anchor, in case we go fishing.
Yet at the same time, he uses that money to take care of his disabled wife.
This is our wedding anniversary. 10 years ago today, my dear.
Good heavens, of course.
You see, I have more sentiment about these things than you have.
And show kindness to stray cats and struggling young women he refuses to kill. Before the war, cinema drew a clear line between good and evil. Heroes were heroes, villains were villains. But in this film, everything became blurred. Verdoux is both killer and provider. This moral ambiguity was new for comedy. A monster wearing a gentleman's mask. Another major shift in post-war cinema is where murder is justified. Verdoux doesn't just kill for money, he rationalizes his actions as lesser evil. He compares himself not to other criminals, but to nations that build weapons of mass destruction and kill innocent people on massive scale. Compared to them,
As a mass killer, I'm an amateur by comparison.
in his logic, murder only becomes a crime when it's done on small scale. Do it on a large scale, and you become a hero. In The Great Dictator, Chaplin openly mocked Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. The enemy was clear, and the audiences knew who to laugh at.
Hold of this! Ah, my little Hanky. My dictator brother. I knew we having no trouble.
But in Monsieur Verdoux, nothing is that simple. The line between good and evil is not just blurred, it's completely crossed. When Verdoux talks about mass murder being rewarded, he isn't referring to Nazi Germany. He is clearly pointing at the Allied side, criticizing is the United States or Britain.
Wars, conflict, it's all business. One murder makes a villain, millions a hero. Numbers sanctify, my good fellow.
This wasn't comedy against the political regime. This was comedy aimed at the moral hypocrisy of entire world. Monsieur Verdoux was immediately appreciated in Europe, influencing in 1949 British dark comedy Kind Hearts and Coronets. This time the story follows Louis Mazzini, a quiet, well-mannered young man who has been denied his aristocratic heritage. His mother was cast out by her wealthy family, the powerful Gascony dynasty, and after her death, Louis decided to take back the family title by killing everyone who stands in his way. The protagonist transformed murder into something elegant and intellectually satisfying. Every death is planned carefully, politely, even artistically. There is no house, no cruelty, just polite, quiet removal. And what's even more unsettling is how the film makes the audience root for the killer. Louis is intelligent, calm, and charming, so we begin to follow his logic. He explains everything with such charm that we begin to understand him, even sympathize with him. Unlike Monsieur Verdoux, this film doesn't burden the viewer with moral speeches or existential guilt. It refuses to apologize for anything. Every murder is executed with style, and the victims are portrayed as arrogant members of the British aristocracy, detached from real life and full of self-importance. Casting Alec Guinness to play all 8 of the Gascoigne family members was more than comic trick.
There were then some 8 people between me and the dukedom, all seemingly equally out of reach. It is so difficult to make a neat job of killing people with whom one is not on friendly terms.
It turned the dying aristocrats into identical symbols of class privilege. Their deaths feel less like crimes and more like social justice. It wraps cruelty in elegance and invites the audience to enjoy it. A few years later, this tradition continued with another classic British comedy, The Ladykillers. The story follows a gang of criminals led by the eccentric Professor Marcus. They hide in the home of a kind old lady, Mrs. Wilberforce, pretending to be musicians.
Some friends and I have formed a small musical group, a string quintet, in fact.
While secretly planning a bank robbery. When she accidentally discovers their crimes, the gang decided to kill her to protect themselves, but none of them dares to do it. One by one, they turn on each other and die in ridiculous ways, until Mrs. Wilberforce is only one left, completely unharmed and still believing in the goodness of people.
I have all the money back at the house. You see, I took charge of it. And they were so alarmed, they simply disappeared.
They didn't have a spaceship, did they?
While in Kind Hearts and Coronets, the murder of arrogant aristocrats never felt shocking. The Ladykillers presents a very different moral dilemma. Killing an old, innocent woman is unthinkable, even for criminals.
I decided I'd change my mind. I ain't gonna do it.
At first, the gang doesn't even consider murdering her. They try to lie the way out trouble, claiming they were robbers of money they had been saving for their sick mother.
Waiting with patient serenity, but with high hope that she has nothing more to fear. My mother.
But when Mrs. Wilberforce refuses to be deceived, they decided they had no choice but to get rid of her. And that way they all break down, not because they are gentlemen, but because they are still human. This marks a shift in post-war storytelling. Even bad characters are no longer simple caricatures. They are human, flawed, conflicted, and unable to fully cross the line into evil. This kind of dark humor, where crime becomes ordinary and morality turns unstable, was not just British phenomenon. Across Europe, filmmakers were also rethinking comedy in shadow of war. In France, this shift was captured powerfully by Sacha Guitry in La Poison. The story takes place in a little French village where a farmer named Paul Braconnier has been trapped in miserable marriage for 30 years. He hates his wife and she hates him just as much. Both secretly dream of killing each other. After hearing a radio interview with a famous lawyer who always wins murder cases, Paul visits him under false pretenses. He pretends he has already killed his wife just to get advice. The intelligent lawyer unknowingly explains how to commit the perfect murder and avoid punishment.
Vous vous êtes saisi du couteau parce qu'elle vous menaçait de vous lancer la soupière.
Et comme la table nous séparait...
En se penchant pour vous lancer la soupière, elle s'est pour ainsi dire embrochée d'elle-même.
Oui, voilà.
Paul returns home, kills his wife during dinner, and later uses the lawyer's own strategy in court. He manipulates the judges, exposes the hypocrisy of the legal system, and walks free happily. Before the war, the French village comedians still believed in social harmony. In The Baker's Wife, a small village is thrown into crisis when the baker's unfaithful wife abandons him for a shepherd, and in his despair he refuses to bake bread. The villagers rally together, not out of compassion, but out necessity, and pressure the wife to return. Order is restored, community wins, and life goes on. But after the war, the faith in human decency vanished. In La Poison, the village is no longer a place of solidarity. It is a marketplace of opportunism. When Paul Braconnier murders his wife, the villagers don't condemn him. they celebrate him. His crime brings publicity to their forgotten town, and suddenly he is treated like a guest of honor.
Tu n'as que des sympathies là-bas, parce que je vais te dire, ça nous a fait du bien à tous.
Du bien, comment ça?
Pour le commerce.
Murder becomes entertainment, morality becomes irrelevant, and profit replaces empathy. This shift shows how post-war dark comedy rejected sentimental illusions about human kindness and exposed selfishness and corruption hiding behind a respectable society. The heart of La Poison is not the murder, but the trial that follows, where justice turns into theater. In court, Paul Braconier doesn't defend himself with truth. He performs. He twists logic, plays the role as humble man driven to desperation, and flatters the jury with calculated charm.
J'observe une chose extraordinaire, c'est à quel point le fait d'avoir commis un crime peut développer l'intelligence.
The judge pretends to seek justice. The lawyer poses as moral authority, and the villagers watch the trial like a spectacle. Everyone follows the ritual of law, but no one interested in truth. Paul walks free not because he innocent, but because he understands how easily the system can be manipulated.
Car si je n'avais pas tué ma femme, c'est elle qui m'aurait supprimé. Et me reprocher de l'avoir tuée, c'est me reprocher de ne pas être mort.
In Guitry's view, murder is just symptom. The real disease is society that treats it as normal. Up to this point, post-war dark comedies used murder to expose moral decay and social hypocrisy. But the late 1950s, the tone of dark comedy began to change. Criminals were not monsters or masterminds. They were ordinary people pushed into desperate acts by financial reality. The new tone of dark comedy found its clearest expression in Italy with a big deal on Madonna Street. The story follows a group of desperate small-time thieves who decide to pull off big heists to escape poverty, led by Pepe, a failed boxer, and joined by a group of misfits. They plan to break into a pawn shop walled by drilling through a wall. They study the plan like professionals, but they're totally incompetent. After hours of effort and house, they finally break through, only to discover they drilled into the wrong room. They had no money, only a pot of pasta, hungry and defeated. The robbery fails and nothing changes. In the pre-war comedy, What Scoundrels Men Are, the protagonist dreams of simple, respectable life, steady work, a small house, and loving wife. Family and social stability are presented as natural paths to happiness, but Big Deal on Madonna Street reveals a very different post-war reality. Her dreams have been replaced by survival. The characters in the film, marriage, war, and social respectability have lost their meaning. The future offers no promise of improvement. For most of them, tomorrow looks just as bleak as yesterday.
Adesso poverino è disoccupato. E allora ogni tanto, la vera, vengo qua io per portare aiuto, la vera?
The film questions the myth that stability and happiness naturally follow social conformity. In the final scene, Pepe, after failing as thief, hides from the police among workers at dawn. he is absorbed into anonymous working class, not a step toward fulfillment, but yet another compromise in life without real prospects.
Beppe, ma dove vai? Dove vai?
The film takes place in bleak, grey slums, filmed on winter nights and rainy streets to emphasize poverty and hopelessness. It's a pessimistic, neo-realist comedy. It keeps the social realism of post-war Italy, but strips away the optimistic belief in moral renewal.
Oggi una buona notizia, domani una cattiva.
Director Manicelli rejects the hopeful tone of classic neorealism and shows instead the collapse of its ideals. If Big Deal on Madonna Street reflected the poverty and disillusionment of post-war Europe, The Executioner by Luis Garcia Berlanga exposed the dark side of Europe's so-called economic miracle. The story follows José Luis, a shy young undertaker who dreams of normal life. After marrying Carmen, the daughter of state executioner, he is forced to accept his father-in-law job to receive government apartment. He signs the contract believing he will never actually have to execute anyone, but the system slowly traps him. When he's finally called to perform an execution, everyone pressures him to do his duty, and despite his desperation to escape, he is dragged step by step into the role he's never wanted.
Porque...
While early post-war dark comedies treated murder casually, something done almost playfully to achieve personal goals, later films began to restore a sense of moral conflict. Violence was no longer funny or liberating. It became a burden. In The Executioner, the protagonist isn't motivated by greed or ambition, but is slowly crushed by social pressure. He doesn't want to harm anyone, yet to keep his government apartment and provide for his family. He is forced into becoming an executioner.
Está bien así de alto.
Yo no sé. Haga lo que usted quiera. Yo estoy esperando.
Here, the horror doesn't come from murder itself, but from a system that quietly forces ordinary people to participate in violence against their will. Despite economic growth, much of society remained unchanged beneath the surface.
Dicho 1000 veces que no sé por qué tienes que salir a la calle tan ceñido.
Ahora
con
resulta
esos
que tengo yo
jerseys.
la culpa, ¿no?
Naturalmente que tienes la culpa.
The image of modern life, new apartments, steady jobs, and social respectability was built on old system of fear and quiet obedience. The Executioner reveals how progress can be illusion. Even in a modern Europe of the 1960s, people were still trapped in roles they never chose, pressure to sacrifice their conscience for the sake of comfort. The film shows that society can enjoy prosperity and order while slowly losing its humanity.